Perfect. So thank you all. I have been very looking forward for several years to having Joanna Gaudoin speak to us. I've been familiar with her through Rebecca Cater, one of our London co-chairs, for several years now, and had been waiting for her book to come out for some time. Joanna founded a group in London called Inside Out Image over 10 years ago to help organizations and individuals understand and master personal impact and relationship management. And as a speaker, she's been well received by organizations like the leading UK law firm RPC, by Bank of America, and the Sovereign Group. Most likely, she's become an author of Getting On, Making Work Work. She wrote this book because in a competitive market, excellent professional knowledge and experience aren't enough. Today's moderator is one of our London co-chairs, Rebecca Cater. Rebecca is head of the Center for Legal Leadership in London. Recently, she was shortlisted for the Innovative Leader Award from the Women Influence and Power in Law UK Awards. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Rebecca and Joanna and thank them again for joining us today.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Diane. I can see some other attendees from the UK, but I feel that Joanna and I have got a lot to live up to after your introduction of being a duo from London. So I shall do my best, and I apologise beforehand that I'm actually in the office today, so I've got a different setup, so I'm not quite sure, and I'm a bit of a dinosaur with tech, so if I'm looking at the wrong camera or the wrong screen, please just ignore that. But I'm delighted to be moderating this session. I've worked with Joanna now for a couple of years, but I think known her slightly before that when I actually attended one of her really great sessions, and that's sort of how I thought, wow, I want to bring that to the community that we have here at CLL. So last year, Joanna delivered an amazing series for us, Developing Positive Relationships in Your Role. We looked at a number of different themes. Two of the ones that really stood out for me were the political intelligence, which didn't centre on over here it's sort of Conservative, Labour or the others, but it actually looked at what actually goes on with office politics and how you can get into the heads of others and actually turn that into a positive with your career and take that forward. And the other exciting angle we looked at was managing up and sideways, which was actually a request we had from our community, because that's such something that gets missed, and we hadn't actually heard of a course addressing that. So these are really great things that Joanna brought to the community. And I must say, we had record numbers, and each time Joanna speaks, we exceed the previous number. So it's great to have her on board again for this year. So I've got a number of things that I'm going to put to Joanna, but first of all, I think it's best that, she's got such an impressive career. So Joanna, do you want to just introduce yourself so I don't not do you credit?
Thanks very much, both Diane and Rebecca. Thank you. So hello, everyone. Great to meet you. I don't know nearly everyone on this call, so that's really nice to come across new people and for it to be a nice, relaxed setting like this. I haven't got any slides today, so quite different, which is great. So I am on my third career, effectively. I started out in marketing for Kimberly-Clark, so massive US company that most of you will know. So I was quite an expert in the very unglamorous products of tampons, nappies, and toilet roll, or diapers, as you would call them in the US. So a founding moment, I think, was going to a big nappy factory up in the north of England and learning about all the different layers going to nappies, apparently. So I worked in marketing for 3 years in the French market and then the UK markets, so regional markets rather than centrally. And then I decided I wanted to do something a bit broader because I'd done an international management French degree and I didn't want to get stuck in marketing. So I think sort of part of the draw as well was I didn't want to be stuck in Kent, which is where the UK office of Kimberly-Clark was at that point. I wanted a London life because I was in my 20s. I wanted a bit more excitement, and I found myself camping on my friends' sofas each weekend to go out. and then trucking back to Kent on a Sunday night. So I moved into consultancy. People told me, oh, you won't be able to do that quickly. That will take some time. But I was actually quite fortunate. And I think I got the first role I went for. So it was marketing consultancy as part of a big media agency. So looking at the effectiveness of different marketing. And my job wasn't all the spreadsheet stuff. I'm actually married to somebody that I did meet in that job. And he does all the spreadsheet stuff still. 65,000 rows is quite typical. But I did the understanding the brand piece and making sure what we fed back they could actually use in the business based on what we'd found out about them. So I did a range of consultancy roles. I did a spell in commercial due diligence, which was definitely not for me. Very introverted company, nice people, but very introverted, not much client contact. My first task there was sizing the global market for mechanical seals. Didn't even know what one of those was. Apparently they go in pumps. So had to hide my joy when they paid me to leave with redundancy in 2009 with the last recession. What a shame, you're giving me £8,000 to go and get another job. Oh dear. I moved into another consultancy, but in all honesty, I never really found what I wanted to do. I didn't feel like I was using my gifts and skills, and didn't really have any idea what I did want to do. Even 12 years ago, which I set up my company 12 years ago this coming autumn, I wouldn't have believed you that I'd run my own company. So I went to work with a lovely lady called Olivia, who was a fantastic career transition coach. And there's a long backstory to that, but she helped me work out what I wanted to do, what I wanted my days to look like, what skills I wanted to use. And I went and retrained in autumn, or I should say in the US, fall 2011 in image and impact, interview skills, so impact to interview, and established my business in sort of September, October that year. And what can I say? It's grown massively since then. I offer a far broader range of support and development than I did when I first started up, and I've added to my portfolio, my repertoire of what I offer by training. So in the political intelligence work that Rebecca mentioned, I think that was 2017 I did that. I was working on a big global leadership program with other people like myself. Actually, interestingly, shows the value of networking, which features a lot in the book, because somebody I worked with in Belgium in my year out at university, it was a recruitment consultancy, but not the typical kind. They organised forums to bring together companies and individuals looking for roles. I met her there, and she established a consultancy, and I was doing the global program through her. And within that program, there was someone there offering the political intelligence work, which I thought was really impactful. So he then trained me after that, and that's added that. So I've added lots to my offering, mainly through what I've learned people really need to progress in their careers, and quite frankly, to navigate daily working life to make it more enjoyable and more fulfilling. So that's kind of middle version, not very short, but not very long. It's how I got to where I am.
So before we go on and talk about your book, which I've been reading avidly, you know that I was showing Joanna all the pictures of my highlights and post-its that I've got in the book. Transitional coach. What was your biggest takeaway of working with such, I mean, to be quite honest, I hold my hands up. I've actually not come across that term. So, but what was the biggest thing that you took out of having a coach and sitting down and talking to them about your career? What was the biggest takeaway from that?
She made me step back. So the ultimate goal was, I remembered her making me draw out on big pieces of paper 2 stars. One was a professional star with 5 points, as a star has, and one was a personal star. And I can't remember now what each of the 5 points represented, but each session we focused on coming up with answers to a point. So, for instance, the ones I remember of what do I feel like I'm really good at work? You know, when are the moments when I really enjoy? And then I think we did probably talk about the things I enjoyed less. What did I want my days to look like? And then, for instance, on the personal one, what were my values? So she really made me take a step back, and she made me do some, I think it's called envisaging, She made me face up to some limiting beliefs, so things we believe we absolutely can't do, which, you know, really, but yes, we're never going to be the best at lots of things, but we do limit ourselves with that. My husband always laughs at me because sometimes when we're talking about something, he said, "Oh, don't tell me you're going to tell me this is a limiting belief." So it's a phrase I've adopted to some degree, but I guess the biggest learning is take a step back, and you need to look broad before you then narrow down. And she was extremely good at that, and she asked great questions. And I'm not a trained coach, and people call me a coach, but I'm actually not one. I'm not a trained one, and I choose not to be, because I'm far more directive than a coach is ever meant to be, I think. Some coaches will say they're directive, but do a lot of listening, but I do a lot of tangible, go and try this, come back and tell me how it went. But she didn't do that. She asked great questions, and there's a good place for coaching. I've used a business coach since as well. But she really helped me take a step back. She helped me think about, how do I bring together the suite of star points that came up, what in the middle was then the key points for professional life and personally, and how did I take that forward into what I did next.
So that leads nicely into what did you do next? So what actually led you to write the book, and how did you go about that? Because, you know, it's something I've always thought about, but you never have enough hours in the day, don't know where to start. It's quite a daunting task. So how did you approach that and fit that into such a busy schedule with everything else?
Yeah, it was challenging, and it wasn't something I'd ever desperately wanted to do, in all honesty. And having now done it, I'll talk about how I came to do it, but having now done it, I'm really delighted with the book. I think it brings together, you know, lots of the work I do with clients, and hopefully helps to raise awareness of really important topics that people need to work on. I don't love writing. What I love doing is speaking, running the master classes, seminars like I've done for you, Rebecca, at the Centre of Legal Leadership. Going like I did yesterday. I went to speak at Cambridge University yesterday. I ran a session for a law firm yesterday morning. You know, that's the stuff I really love and get energy from doing. It's not really writing. So it wasn't something I'd hankered after doing. It was a combination of clients saying, "Oh, have you got a book?" Or if I went to speak somewhere, "Have you got a book?" That over time starting to wear me down, I guess, to think about a book. And then a couple of key people come to mind, both men, actually. One was a male client of mine, a corporate client, and it's a client I have where I work with the vice president of an association to help them present the organisation well and have the impact they need in lots of different regards. And he kept on at me a bit, and he'd written books, not so much from a professional accounting perspective, but he'd written some on outside interest. So he was quite influential. And then another contact of mine, a colleague, who he refers work to me actually for the most part. We had a lunch, I think. I took him for lunch to thank him for referring somebody. And he talked about writing a book. He specialises in working in the social housing sector and chairing meetings. He was writing a book, and he talked about working with a book coach, and he made it feel a bit more tangible. I don't know if any of you have ever done, I talk about this in the book, the 4 Tendencies quiz. Gretchen Rubin, she's from the US, so you may have heard of her. She does a lot of work on habits, and she talks about people being either really good at meeting outer expectations, inner expectations, so things we just want to do ourselves, neither or both. And I'm definitely what she calls an obliger. So I meet outer expectations. You know, if you email me and ask me for something, ask me to do something, I will do it. But if there's something just on my mind that I'd quite like to do, but it doesn't really matter to anybody else, I'm less likely to do it, unless I've got accountability externally to do it. And so I thought, well, the book coaching group would give me that accountability as well as the structure to write the book. So I inquired with the lady that this guy I've been working with, and he'd worked with her individually, but she did run these groups, and she had a supporting software system where there's videos and PDFs to help you. And the kickoff really was every week we met at the same time. Well, you could either join the morning or the evening slots. You were part of a large group. And you had your moment with the book coach during the session. You have to talk about where you'd got to, or the first few weeks were about planning. And the planning was really interesting because although I'm a really organised person in many ways, I'm actually quite a flexible person, and the best sessions for me that I run with clients are the ones where they go a little bit off-piste and clients feel really happy to ask the questions that I almost didn't plan for, and we go slightly in a different direction. So when I write, I'm not the best planner with writing, and in fact my essays at university, I didn't plan them, I just wrote. So the book coach's face when I told her that, she's like, yeah, you know, you can't do that with a book, right? I said, yeah, I get it. It'll just be a big mess. So she gave some ideas, like that mainly were around sticking post-its on the wall, you know, write up your ideas, group them up, all this stuff. I was like, oh, I can't be doing that mess in my house. Can't do post-its. We'll be falling off the wall. That's not going to work. So what did I do? I got a spreadsheet. And I should have checked actually, but I got the spreadsheet, and every single row I detailed a different piece of guidance, advice that I'd given to clients over the years. So I went through every single workshop I delivered, every single my clients, their notes written up after a one-to-one session of any concepts and things they're going to go and work on. I went through all of those and put them one by one on a row, and all my blogs as well. And then so I ended up with hundreds of rows of stuff. But then it was quite easy actually to put it into what core topic is this, what's a secondary topic, and then group them up. That helped me form the structure for the book. So the 3 parts that are in the book, and then the chapters that sit within those 3 sections. I went back to the book group the next week, and you should have seen people's faces. Oh no, I haven't done this. Oh no, what am I going to do? I've just got a few post-its on the wall. I was like, don't go by me. I've gone a bit all or nothing on this. So you don't have to follow what I've done. But it did really work for me. It might not have worked for everybody else, other people. But the contact that told me about the book coach, he had a great piece of advice. He said, you never want to sit down to write and wonder what you're going to write about. You want to almost in your mind be mulling over, right, when I get to my desk in half an hour, I'm going to be writing about, because then you can start to think about it in advance and you're very focused in your writing time rather than spending half of it trying to work out what you're going to say. Then the other piece of guidance from the coach was just write, you can edit later. So just get stuff down. And she would do things like in the session online, she'd say, right, Joanna, how many thousand words are you going to write by next week? And that helped me get it done, because I literally crossed the words off. And I think I set myself a goal of, trying to remember, I think it's 2,000 words a week to get it done. Didn't meet it every week, and it was challenging because I knew I was going to be writing the book. I started in June, where are we now? June 21. And I hoped to finish it by the end of 2021. I unfortunately got COVID quite badly, as in hospital, but for 6 weeks. I had a lot of fatigue, and so that delayed a lot of work, but also then delayed working on the book. So I didn't really finish the book until early last year, and then there was working out the publishing, and that process was quite full on. And we also moved house last year. We started a 9-month renovation project in October, so I'm sitting in a built-in site right now. So there's been all that, and then we sadly lost a couple of really close family members as well. My sister came from Australia for the whole of last December. So it's been quite a challenging process to write the book, I have to admit, alongside delivering what I hope is great client work, and then managing all those other things in our lives last year and the year before. But
well,
I'm happy
that's
with
a
where
great
it's
story. Thank you, and a massive achievement. Well done on getting that done. And it's definitely the spreadsheets in the household have rubbed off on you. So getting to the book, it looks at how to be good at work, how to do a good job. So what are the sort of issues around that, do you think, that can come up?
The big challenge really for people, I think, most of the people I work with are in professional and financial services, not all of them, but the majority, at least 80%, I'd say. So you're talking lawyers, accountants, bankers, actuaries, people who are really bright, really technical. They've often done a lot of exams, especially if they're lawyers, but also if they're bankers as well, banking exams, other financial exams, and actuarial as well. And they don't think of anything beyond the technical. They just think, I need to do all that stuff. I need to get that done. And they're right, they do. They need that good foundation. But that's not enough to carry you through your career, because ultimately other people in your profession will have had to have done those exams as well. And honestly, your clients, whether they be internal or external, are not going to care if you got 10 marks more than your colleague on the exam. Absolutely does not matter. Often what clients care about is that, yes, you do a good job, a good tangible job, you deliver what you're expected to deliver, but it's how you work with people. So to both become more senior, and once you're more senior, you need a broader range of skills.
So from there, what would be some real sort of quick takeaways, some tips on what people can actually do to move your career forward, to go forward, to get that, you know, it's all about work-life balance now, but everybody still wants to progress. And, you know, we've got difficult economic times everywhere. So what are quick wins that, you know, people can easily apply?
About your personal impact. So how do you communicate yourself? So what do your appearance, body language, voice say about you to others? And then this sounds like a big task, I realize, but across all what I call touch points where you interact with people. So how you show up on LinkedIn, how you show up meeting people in person, on video calls, on phone calls, in emails. So thinking about what you are putting out into the working world is a real baseline, and the whole first part of my book focuses on that, because until you think about what you're putting out, you can't really think about how people are responding and how to deal with them. So I have a lot of clients come to me and say, oh, I've got this problem with my boss, you know, and you can't change other people except through changing your own behavior. So you have to be self-aware in the first place to do that. So that's the first thing I'd say. Then the second thing, quick win, is to think about who are your obvious relationships with, so that your boss or other immediate colleagues, and thinking about those relationships objectively. What could be improved about them? What do you need to work on? What's going well? What's going less well? And I think there's potentially a big melting pot accumulating with a lot more working from home, that people are able to ignore problems. So they think, oh, that person that, you know, we've got this difficulty in our relationship, or what they did last week really frustrated me. But you know what? I only see them once a week in the office because our days don't cross over, or, you know, we're not in that many physical meetings together, and things are getting ignored. And that's not a good thing. You know, I led a session for you, did 9 difficult conversations, I think, and leaving those is really a good thing. So I think thinking about those obvious relationships, how can you make them better? Because if you work better with people day to day, you're going to knowledge share a lot more. You're going to be willing to be vulnerable, say when you don't know, when you made a mistake, means they will be as well. And you actually achieve much more and can collaborate a lot better. So I think that's a big one and a real priority, because nobody works on their own. I often put up a picture of a desert island when I'm running a workshop and say, yeah, this is not us at work. We're not just sat on a desert island. Even during the pandemic lockdowns, we had to continually deal with lots of other people every day, both internally and potentially externally, on email, video call, instant messenger, phone, whatever it might have been. So thinking about those. And then probably the third one I'd say is thinking about, well, who else do I need to know for my working life? And that might be internally. So it could be other people of influence that need to know you, because otherwise they won't know what you're achieving at work if they don't know you, if they're not in your immediate sphere. They might be able to impact promotions you get, work you get given, also externally as well. So people always think external networking is about business development. It's for people that need to sell stuff. You know, it's lawyers that need to bring in new clients. And yes, that is a primary need for networking if you're in that situation. But firstly, even if you're not in that situation now, you might be one day, and it's a lot easier if you've got a network. And also there are lots of other reasons to network that I go into in the book. So such as if you want a new role, you know, a client of mine last year, he had a role created for him by someone he knew in his network, which has worked out really, really well. They valued him, they thought it was great for a client of his or something, and they built this role around him. Also just to learn stuff, to get to know your market, what are your competitors doing, meet colleagues or from other companies and firms. So there are a lot of reasons to do that. So it's thinking about those less obvious people, I call them, in your world you should get to know, and building relationships with them.
So us at Quorum being a female community, from your coaching and from your experience, is there anything that you have seen that is specific to, you know, the female group? Anything that we do exceptionally well, or you have to work harder at, or it's less recognized, just from your sort of personal experience and having those that, you know, that privilege in a way of that one-to-one conversation? Is there anything there that you could sort of share with us to
I do, and yeah, this comes with a massive caveat. This could sound real generalizations, but I think women are less good at putting themselves forward naturally. Most men, again, not all men, are much better at shouting about what they've achieved and what they've done. Likewise, at navigating the organisation politically, that tends to come more naturally to men. Women tend to say things like, I just want to go and do my job and leave again, which is a nice idea, but we do need to be able to navigate the working landscape. So I think those are quite big things. There are some other challenges as well. So it was interesting last night, very perceptive question from one of these University of Cambridge students that I was speaking to. So I went and spoke for them. Yeah, it was just a really nice, unusual experience. I got to go to a formal hall afterwards, which was quite something, with prayers in Latin and things, and standing up for people coming in. So that was new for me. And I'd explained a theory that it's not mine, it's in the book, and it talks about strength and warmth. And it's one of the theories that sits behind what our brain is subconsciously considering when we're coming to a first impression of somebody. And it says that we're looking for somebody's competence, how good at they are at what their actual job is. And then the other balancing to that is their warmth, which is how friendly, trustworthy they are. And there is definitely an expectation in society in general, not just at work, that women are warmer. They're more friendly, they're more engaging. Now, is that the case or not? That's a broad question, but I do think there's that expectation, which can be challenging, because then when women aren't like that, we get called various things, I think. So I think that's very difficult for women to balance at work. Hopefully will change over time as environments become even more gender balanced. And so there's both there with different expectations. But I think that's pretty difficult for people. And so thinking about how do you want to come across, that you're empathetic to people, you show you want to collaborate, but also you are, particularly if you're in a leadership position, you're able to draw that line and be a good leader, and not just be everyone's friend and the nice leader, but the person that can make decisions and create vision and motivate the team as well. So there's a few things there.
There's a lot of things there to digest. So in the book, I think it was at the beginning, you mention that, you know, you help people, again, it's along the same lines, with other skills that they need to boost their careers, and also that in turn boosts the firm's performance and is pivotal to their progression. What, in a nutshell, are the things that are missing from someone's toolkit, and why do you think that is?
It is this focus on technical ability, and people thinking that that's the most important thing. Because if you consider that through school into university and college, it is about what you know. It's about exams. It's essentially about, it gets a bit less like this at university when you're meant to give more opinion and back it up, but it's regurgitating knowledge. Whereas at work, yes, you do need that knowledge, but you need to build upon it. And that's, a lot of what I say is not rocket science. As one of my clients perceptively said to me, she was the head of L&D, I think, in a law firm, and she said, a lot of this stuff is common knowledge, but it's not common practice. But when people can make it common practice, it's what makes a difference. So I quite often say when I go and talk, I haven't said this for the CLL ones, Rebecca, but in person, I say to people, I put a postcard on their seat, and there's space on that postcard to write stuff, not much, but I say, write your top 2 takeaways from the session you've attended with me today, that you're making a commitment to yourself of what you're going to work on. Because fundamentally, if you just come out here and go, oh, that was good, but you do nothing, you've wasted your time, and you might as well have gone home and watched telly. Yeah, you've done nothing. So it is about taking some action on these topics and making what I call career time. So I recommend to people that they need to put some time aside in their diary. You know, first thing in the morning could be good before you've got into your emails, you've got into your working day, to work on things like your strategic relationships plan. Who do you need to know? Thinking about feedback you've received, how do you work on that and take it forward? So making time for this stuff and thinking about your impact on others and different perspectives. The other really powerful thing is to think about how you can break any negative relationship patterns you've got into with people. This also works, I would say, in personal life as well. So we all have assumptions and beliefs about people, whether they're right or not, but that then drives our behavior. And then, of course, our behavior drives how people react to us. And that's one of the biggest things, thinking about what can I change in my behavior? Can I act as if, not being naive, but act as if I didn't believe this, I didn't think this person was lazy, disorganized. How might that change my behavior and how might that change theirs? And it's not going to be instantaneous because people are in their own patterns and they might be just responding almost on autopilot. Over time, that has a massive impact. And when people start to do that, that changes relationships, that changes situations, and it changes people's daily working lives.
So one of the chapters in the book, and we've mentioned this before, is difficult conversations. So I would just sort of, and to me, that is one of the biggest things in the workplace. It's really difficult. So I'd really love it if you could share your top tips with this group now. Sorry to put you on the spot, but
no, well, the first thing is to have them. You know, fundamentally, if something, you know, we can't bring up every issue we have with people. You know, anyone that's got another half knows that we can't tell them every time we're frustrated when they've done something or not done something at home. And the same applies in the workplace. But broadly, if something is going to have an ongoing impact or is likely to happen again, or it's something that's just really bothering us, we do need to bring that up. So this, of course, could range from anything from not being happy with your salary, your compensation package, through to someone's behaviour, that they were rude to you, they spoke to you inappropriately, through to your overall career path, through to a deadline moving that you were working on. There's all sorts of things that could happen there. But the first thing is to have the conversation, I would say. Well, actually, I've got a really tangible example of this. Is a client of mine. She's I've worked with her on and off for several years. I helped her get a new role probably about 5-6 years ago, and she's been through several roles since. And I better not say which company she's working at the moment, an enormous American company. And she contacted me a couple of weeks ago. She said, "Oh, you know, I need some help. My CV doing. I'm going to look for a new job." I was like, "Well, why? You only joined that company in August." She said, "Oh, my boss, she's a nightmare." I said, "Okay." Yeah. I said, "Why didn't you talk to me about this?" She said, "Oh, I thought you were busy and stuff." I said, "No, you should definitely talk to me." And yeah, there are definitely, this is going to be a tough one to solve. But when we talked about some of the issues, I said to her, you do need to sit down and have a conversation with her about ways of working with one another and communication plans. Because otherwise you're just dealing with little problems that come up where there's actually an issue with the overall framework of how you're working together. So definitely need to have that conversation. Now, I think she texted me actually just before we came on to talk. I think there's been some fallout from that, so we need to talk again. But definitely having these conversations. Otherwise, all that happens is resentment builds up inside you, which doesn't help you, and it will have an impact on other interactions you have with a person. You won't just put it to one side in many cases. So have the conversation. Do consider what assumptions you have, or beliefs or knowledge, that could be different from that other person. Because we forget that we're in our own world and we come at things with our own agenda, our values, our beliefs. We don't think about other people's perspectives. And particularly, I think, when we've got a manager we're not happy with, we forget that our agenda is not theirs. Yes, they have a vested interest in us and our productivity and us being happy at work, but they've got all these demands coming down to them from the people that they report to. So trying to think about other perspectives, not going into a blame, but trying to go into an understanding mindset, arranging a specific time to have a conversation. So what people often try and do is, at the end of our weekly catch up, I'll shoehorn in this conversation about this thing that I'm not happy about. And that's really good because A, you're not going to have time for it a lot of the time. Maybe it won't happen, or if it does, it'll be quick. You won't get to the bottom of it. And also the other person won't realise how much it means to you because it's just sort of another thing on that list. So make a specific time without being overly dramatic about it. Aim to have what's called a listening conversation. So rather than going, I'm not happy about this, you upset me when you did this, avoid labels. Don't say to someone, I think you're really selfish because you did this, or you were disorganized when you did this. That is not going to help. It's going to make the person defensive. So trying to say, this happened from my perspective, it made me feel this. I assume that this was the case, so that's why I'm not happy. Trying to explain where you're coming from, and then almost pause and give them an opportunity to share their perspective. And throughout the conversation, making it clear that you want to work on the problem together, whatever it is. It's not about blaming that person. So a good example could be if you've said you're not happy with your salary, your compensation package, and they say, well, there's nothing I can do about it. It's trying to work through, well, what is possible, even if not now, but in the coming months, trying to understand why they can't do anything about that. Are they under constraints? Can you get them to commit to a point in 3 to 6 months where you review where you're at? If you've hit some milestones, are they prepared to then go and have another conversation? So make it a collaboration that you're going to work on whatever this issue is together. And so that you've got a plan to move forward. So there's some really quick tips there. I led a session on it for an hour. So
thank you very much. I just want to pick up Melody's put a question in the chat. Thank you. About how, and I actually did think of it myself. Actually, I had this vision of this like crazy spreadsheet. How did you actually narrow down the areas to cover in your book? Is it the ones that you heard the most, that you get the most questions on, or?
They're all in there, is what I say. I literally, as I wrote about them, they got turned to green on the spreadsheet.
A traffic light.
Yes. Somewhere, but I won't share it with you because it's a big mess. Yeah, pretty much everything went in. I mean, sometimes something was a duplicate, thinking, oh, well, I've covered that and we'll have about something else, so it got binned. But I literally effectively ticked everything off in that spreadsheet. So it was quite extreme. I am a little bit, my husband would say, an all or nothing person. And this was definitely all. So things got changed, put a different way, but pretty much everything got put in there. I mean, there are still things now that I think, oh, I wish I put that, because of course I learn, I see new things. I've worked with small clients since I finished that book. But that's always going to be the case, isn't it?
Are you able to give us a taster of other themes that you would have included? I'm just interested because they're so sort of communication, your image. What else do you think? Or are you giving the game away for volume 2?
Oh, there's not a volume 2. I'm done. I purposely did it broad so that I didn't feel like I'm a completer finisher if anyone's ever done Bellwin's team roles. And I thought if I went deep into a topic, I'd then feel the pressure to do loads more. And I knew that probably wasn't going to happen. So it's quite broad. I think it's being more explicit about things. So a lot of the skills in there, the relationship skills, for instance, are widely applicable. But things like the managing upwards and sideways is in there, but it's not got a really bespoke action. There is a bit on team management, a bit on your key relationship with your boss, but I might have just drawn things out a bit more explicitly, I'd say.
Lovely, thank you. So Quorum focuses on advancing women by taking action for ourselves and for each other and the broader community in order to create change. What action for impact, I'm sorry, and I'm reading this, I do own up, for impact are you most focused on at the moment, and what do you recommend for all of us?
Oh, could you say the last bit again, please, Rebecca? There was a lot there, and I was like, oh my goodness.
There is a lot there. This is Diane's question. I give her the credit. So what action for impact are you most focused on at the moment? And what do you recommend for us within Quorum to consider?
Sorry, what do you mean by action for impact? Because that's quite
you know, what sort of tip, what takeaway, what are you working on at the moment to sort of develop yourself, and likewise, what can we do as well?
I think take a step back and think about what do you need to focus on for your career that won't necessarily be demanded from other people that you think is important to push yourself forward. So if I think about myself, as I've relayed to you, last year was a very busy year for me, professionally and personally. And I also launched a new website last year as well, which I don't know, I've not got children, but I believe you forget the pain of childbirth. That's why people have a second and a third. I think it's the same with websites. You know, you forget how awful doing the last website was, and you go into, yeah, I'm going to do a new website. And then 3 months later, it's still not finished, despite all the great help I had. So I did a lot last year. This year, I've had an active conversation with my marketing lady that I don't want to do any enormous big new projects. That doesn't mean time work, that's fine. But in terms of, she was talking to me about, oh, should I do an online training course? I'm still not sure that's the right thing to do at all. I'm definitely not in the zone for anything like that this year. This year for me is a bit of a step back, think, where's the business going directionally? You know, what do I need to be doing, rather than just being a bit like a hamster in a wheel this year. I think this is the word for the year for me is consolidation and reflection. So thinking about what that means, and also probably working a little bit less, I think, because I'm out a lot of evenings speaking, and the house project actually does need time invested in it, because we need to make decisions, we need to go and look at stuff. And if I'm tired and getting home at 10 p.m, you know, tonight we need to think about where the new patio doors will be, how big will they be, and you know, you don't want to get that wrong, right? So I think taking that step back, I think I'm realizing you do have some years that are manically busy and you are just getting on with what presents itself in front of you at work. And there are other years where you need to make an active choice to step back and reflect more. So I met up with a client of mine who works at HSBC actually, and she had quite a big job. I worked with her probably 2 years ago. And she found the pandemic very hard because she's not from the UK, so her family are all in a different place, and I think they had some things happen as well. And she actually admitted to me, she said, I've taken a step down and I've gone a level down at HSBC, which is quite a big call to make, because you think about that, what you're potentially signalling to people by doing that. She's taking lesser salary, but she said, I just felt I need to do some other things. Now we're not in lockdowns anymore. I want to see my family. I don't want to be working till 9 o'clock every night. I want something different for myself. And I think there is a lot more freedom to do that now than there ever was. Even when I started work 20 odd years ago, you know, people wouldn't value that. But you mentioned earlier, Rebecca, you know, work-life balance or blend or whatever people call it now. I think people value their lives more, and I think we appreciate more of one another, that we want different things and we learn by other experiences in life. So I sometimes have some of my best thoughts when I'm sat on a spin bike at the gym. You know, the other day I'm repitching for some work and I thought, oh, I need to remember to mention X and Y, which I probably wouldn't have come up with just sat on my desk. So I think taking a broader step and thinking, what else do I want to do in my life, and how might that also enrich my working life? So that's probably a bit of a rambly answer to your question.
Not at all. So what advice would you give to us all here on this call? What could we do? What would you say to us wearing your official hat?
That's my official hat. I'd have a look at your working life and think, where is it? Give it a red, amber, green status. Yeah, and that's that. You could look at that in several perspectives. You could look at it from general feel. You know, are you buzzing and can't wait to get up in the morning and go to work on a Monday morning, whether that's working at home or in your office? So the general feel, as well as you might look at it from different angles. So are you where you want to be level wise? Are you earning what you want? Are you getting the time you want to see your family or to do other activities? Are you connecting with people in your workplace? Do you have a sense of great relationships there that's fulfilling and helping you to do your best work working with those people? You know, come up with different ways and maybe assess it, spend some time on that and think about what you need to focus on in the coming months, because life is short. Dare I say, we spend a lot of time at work. And it is worth taking time to, what do I need to focus on to make it better for me and those that I work with as well. Are you using your gifts? I mean, that's a massive question, I think. The career transition coach I work with is great. There's also another one that I work with now. I refer clients to her. Sometimes if they come to me and they're saying, oh, I want a change of role, but I don't really know what, and I think I want a big change, they go and work with her, then they come back to me. And she's got a great phrase she uses. It's like something like love your Monday mornings or love your Sunday nights, because she's tapped into that people that aren't enjoying work, Sunday night is very depressing and Monday morning is even worse. And who wants to be like that every week? You know, we all have weeks like that if we're tired and we've just come up from a holiday or we've got something to do we particularly don't like. But that's your life week in, week out, especially if you're in a professional job where you tend to have more choices than if you're in a job such as working in a supermarket or something and you've got limited possibilities perhaps. But most professional people have got options and they've got lots of transferable skills, so it's taking the time to reflect on that.
Lovely. Well, thank you very much, Joanna. It's been fascinating listening to you as always. Although we didn't have a glass of wine this time. Oh, there's one new message. Hold on. Let me see.
We didn't. I'm not going out this evening, so I was not going to have a glass of wine this evening, but it's feeling quite tempting.
So a question is from Lynn. Are you using your gift? I don't know if you can see that. Are you using your gifts? Is a very insightful question to consider. And I do agree, it definitely is. So thank you ever.
Yeah.
So
and
thank you
Olivia
ever
helped me do
so
that.
much. So. I'm now gonna, so massive thanks from me, and I'm sure from everybody else on the call. So I'm now going to hand over to Meg.
Thanks, Rebecca. Joanna, thanks so much for sharing all of your insights. I want to applaud you like Rebecca did for taking on a task that felt daunting and achieving it in writing the book. So congratulations on that. That's not a small undertaking. So I want to point that out. And thank you so much for being giving of your time and talking to us a bit about all that you've learned in your process of working with clients and the things that all of us could be thinking about. A couple of things touched me, which I just thought I would share. You know, when I was listening to you, I really loved the notion. I think too often in the work environments, we are so focused on what you were talking about as technical skills, which is really important. And I do think women spend a lot of time on that in order to prove themselves. Funny enough, there's not enough support for what still has kind of a label around soft skills. I'm trying to get rid of that word, actually. I think necessary
not a good
skills.
one, is it?
No, it's terrible, terrible word. But real
good.
skills, you know, the real other skills that you need, that is at least, you mentioned it's at least as 50% as important in leadership. You know, if you're going to move forward and take on bigger positions, and you can't do it without it. And so I think that that's really interesting, not only as you think about it for yourself, but as you think about teams you're leading, or, you know, how you're influencing your own organizations, you know, about where and how they're spending time and money on their people. So I thought that was really fascinating. I also loved the notion of dealing with difficult situations, because I think we all want to run away from them when they exist.
We do. I mean, very few people go, yes, give me a difficult
it's just
conversation.
That's not fun
at all.
And trying to kind of pick those apart. And I used to say, you know, I used to tell team members all the time, you know, stop having conversations over email, particularly as it escalates, because it's this insanity where people misunderstand each other and they just keep misunderstanding, and it piles up and it gets bigger, and it's like, pick up the phone and make something happen, or, you know, connect if you can in person, which we're starting to do a little bit more of these days, you know, et cetera. So I always found that so funny. So I loved that you brought that up. I think that's actually really important, because it's like your weakest link is what demonstrates your biggest strength, you know, so it's a really important concept. And the last thing that you brought up, which was your big challenge to all of us, was about this notion of career planning, or taking a look and thinking about it, and checking in with yourself. even on that, most important happiness factor, which I think is hard for many, because so often we put our head down and we're just working hard and just trying to get through every day, and finding that time and space is very hard to do. So I appreciated that comment, because I think we owe it to ourselves. If I could put that out, that challenge out to the group, we owe it to ourselves to make space for that, and really think about it, and not get swallowed up by the day-to-day, and find a way to actually structure that in. It's as important as brushing your teeth every morning. That's that kind of thing. Got to get that in as part of how you really think about things, and you do some of that mapping. Whether you're having impact, whether it's going down a path that makes sense to you, are you spending your time smartly? All those things that if you're in the thick of it, you just can't see. You just can't see it all. So I loved all of those comments. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And if we were all here, in person, we would give you a big round of applause, I'm sure, and probably some hugs afterwards. So thank you for that, and thank you, Rebecca, for leading the discussion. It was so important. So the one action item I want to give this group is to really take that last point that Joanna made around thinking about the career planning. And by the way, not only thinking about it for yourself, which is we don't make enough space for, but also how do you encourage others around you to do the same? Because so many of us are either leading teams or have lots of people around we can have influence over. And I just think that's such a beautiful message at all stages and all moments in our lives. We should be thinking about that. So I think that that's a really amazing gift we can give ourselves. So there you go. So I'm going to ask us all to take that up and really think about it seriously after this call, and see if we can't get that implemented first and foremost for ourselves, like actually tomorrow, because let's do it for tomorrow, let's get it done, right? So let's get it done for tomorrow, and then think about next week, how we can maybe offer that gift to others. So that's the action item I want to throw out to the whole community. And the only other thing I wanted to mention while we were all together, first of all, it's so great to see all of you. So hi, everybody. Second of all, I just wanted to mention a few things that we have going on coming up. And Diane, I'm going to screw up dates, so I might need your help on this. We have a next speaker series that comes in February. Can you even believe we're towards the end of January? This is insane. Thank you. The cohort comes first. I knew I was going to get the dates wrong. So we have quorum cohorts, which is on February 1, which is for all members. And those are just fantastic kind of intimate discussions. I highly recommend, make time for it if you can. It's a great way to meet fellow members, and also just very cool exchanges happen. So I can't recommend it enough. Second thing is we have a group of just unbelievably amazing women, and many of you have met Niathon, who is a member of Quorum, and she belongs to a group of South Sudanese women who are really working very hard on how they raise their voices, but also educate and work on rights and all kinds of really important issues for their community, which is women in South Sudan. So they're going to come speak to all of us, and I think it's going to be a fascinating discussion. So I highly recommend if you can make that work. And then the two other big things to mention to get on your calendars is Quorum has a retreat coming up in May, starting on the night of the 19th through the 21st up in Narrowsburg, New York. It's a really fun weekend. We did it last year, and some of you on this call were there. It was just a great moment. And then we already have a date for our next HOW Forum in New York City, and that is November 3rd with a dinner the night before. The dinner is fantastic, so don't miss that. And then the all-day session on the 3rd is completely worth your time. So just make sure you sort of get that into your schedule. So anyway, sorry for all of the news on that. Joanna, Rebecca, thank you again for all that you shared, and I hope everyone has a great rest of their week, and let's take that time for ourselves around our own career and where we're headed. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.